We are live. Thank you so much for coming on to one of our shows where we provide you with various strategies on how it is that you can streamline your business, ensure that you are making the best use of your time. I'm Michelle O'Connor. If you're new to our live, we go weekly sharing various topics that are relevant to private practice owners. And I might say that this can also help many other persons. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about this evening is how it is you can ensure that your practice, your office is profitable. Now, if you know someone who operates a practice, we're going to be talking about how can you calculate the profitability of the offices that you have. Now, this topic came about from a discussion that I was having with a client and, just sharing her plans to reduce the revenue, the income that she takes on a monthly basis because the office is not generating enough and the office would be negatively impacted. So in my conversation with her, we started talking about what's the usage of the office space because she shares it with somebody else, only to realize that that person isn't coming in a lot. So what that means is the office is left empty, it's left vacant. So if it's not being used, it means that you're not generating money. Now, what can happen for us is without having this information and knowing how it is that you can think about the revenue that you're bringing in, you might start to think, I need to do more. I need to work more hours. I need to reduce my income when it just could be, how can I ensure that if it's costing me $10,000 to operate this office, at the minimum, I should be breaking even, but we don't want to break even, we want to make a profit. So how much do I need to generate? So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. And if you know anyone who has a practice and this could benefit them, I'm inviting you to just have them join so we can talk it through. And as I shared before, this can also be relevant for you regardless of if you're a healthcare professional, because the formula that we use is basically the same thing. So I'm going to be walking you through how you can think about making your office space more profitable. Now, the first thing you want to think about, or to even know if this is relevant for you, is, are you having those kind of financial challenges where you're thinking, I'm not generating enough, I'm not making enough, I have to cut back, I don't even know if I am generating the revenue I need? It means that you probably need to take a look at it. So we're going to be walking you through with that. So what are some of the signs that your spaces aren't profitable? One, you have no idea if it's profitable, right? So that's the very first thing. You're not able to answer the question easily. Am I making enough money? Am I, generating the profit that I need to be generating? So that is one sign that your office is not profitable. There's a huge gap between patient flow. So you're not sure if you are making headway with your patients. Your patients are inconsistent in terms of the times that they come in, and you're wondering, am I doing the right thing? What do I need to be doing differently? So if your patient flow is inconsistent, that is also a sign that your your profit is off. You're unable to track the revenue for your office space. That again, I don't know. You ask the question, is your office, are you making enough revenue? I don't know. Persons come, they go, we're paying the bills, we're keeping the lights on. Those are some of the responses that we might get. Or you're taking a low wage because you're not generating sufficient income. So one of the other things that normally comes up for private practice owners is that there's no budget. So you don't know if the income that you're generating is even sufficient because there isn't a budget. You're just going by day to day, but having one is very, very important. So when you think about your office space, as we go into the conversation a little bit more, what I want you to remember is you have spaces that generate revenues. That is where you're actually seeing your patients. So whether, you have an office where they sit and they have conversation with you, you have a procedure room, you name it. And then you also have spaces that you use to serve your patients, which you may not be generating income from. And why is this important? As we go through, we'll talk about it some more. But if you think about like a supermarket, they have inside where you go in and shop, and they also have to provide parking. A lot of times, most times, all the times, you're not making money from the parking lot, but you're making money when persons come in and shop. So when you think about your office space, you are not just thinking about where you're serving your patients. You're thinking about the entire space that you're using, whether it's you're paying for parking, whether persons are sitting in a waiting room. Is that your waiting room, or are you sharing the space? That is what I want you to remember, because this is now going to be important as we go further into the conversation. So here are a few things that I want you to think about. The cost for underutilized space. Now, you may say you're paying rent. The rent that you're paying is for the entire space, and that amount is fixed, and you're being billed that on a monthly basis. So if the space is not being used, it means that you are incurring a cost and you're not generating revenue that matches that cost that you're incurring. So you have low revenue. That's a cost for underutilized space that turns into low profit. And also think about your resources. Your resources are now underutilized because they are sitting there and they're not serving anyone. They aren't offering a service and getting anything in return. And we can go into, we're not going to be talking about that this evening, but when you think about persons who are underutilized on your team, it can then lead to other things. They get demotivated. The service that they deliver, the service quality is poor, you name it. So think about the cost for the space, not just in terms of the money that you're paying, but the impact it has on the person that you have on your team. The other thing you want to do is that you want to maximize the utilization of your room. I remember I was working with a client and she had about 3 offices. And one of the things that we were talking about is, how can you ensure that even the procedures that those rooms that persons go into those rooms for, that it's making enough money? Because you may just say, okay, you know what, you go to that room, somebody goes to another room. But when you think about your practice, think about it the same way a bank would think about branches. If you have more than 1 branches, you are thinking about the profitability of the branches. Think about your office space the very same way. So understand that it costs you when the space is not being used. If you have an office space that is empty 50% of the day, it means that you're not generating enough income. Again, assessing your scheduling to ensure the rooms are fully utilized throughout the day. So when you think about your scheduling, you want to now think about how often are persons coming in, what's my no-show rate, because that is another thing that can be a challenge for persons, where persons aren't coming in for their appointment or they are canceling. We did a whole nother live on that in terms of tools that you can use, that you can how you can automate those reminders that goes out to your patient to reduce your no-show rate. Explore opportunities to rent the space to other practitioners, and also add flexible service like telehealth. Now, on the conversation about renting to practitioners, I encourage persons to sign an agreement, because this can be a challenge, as it was for a prospective client I was talking to, where she rents the space to somebody else. However, that person does not come in as often as she would like, and because it's a revenue share, if they don't come in and generate revenue, there's no share that goes to her. So you want to think about ensure that you have an agreement when you decide to rent a space. So explore those opportunities. We know sometimes there are physicians who are still linked to a hospital. So you're working with a hospital, so you're out or you're on call somewhere else. So you may not be in your practice all the time, but think about a practitioner that you could rent it to. And it can be anybody, it can be a nurse, maybe they're offering services, and we'll talk about telehealth models, because those are also in and those are making headways. Persons aren't able to come out all the time and they want to be served. So someone can literally be renting your office and they're just having conversations with persons online. That can also work. Boosting the revenue for your office space. Now, if you have realized, if you joined earlier and you saw all the questions that we asked, if you are able to realize that I can't answer the question as to whether or not my office is profitable, I just know that I'm able to pay the bills, keep the lights on, pay myself, pay my staff, and you know that there is something that's missing. Scheduling is an issue. Persons aren't coming in. The office space is being underutilized. We're not going to be talking about how it is that you can boost the revenue. The first thing you want to do is track the revenue generated in your rooms. And we say it all the time, and we will continue to repeat it, that your numbers never ever lie, and you make decision from data. So you want to start by tracking. Think about how much am I really generating? Increase the revenue by offering premium or high demand service. Now, if you are tracking your revenue, you are able to see what is it that patients are coming in for. What are they coming in for more than other? Which one of our services are in high demand? And then the other thing is, what are we not offering that persons may be asking for? When you're able to do that, you are now in a position to make an objective decision about, okay, what do have I priced this properly? Because that's another conversation we can have as well. Or is there something that they're asking for that I'm not offering that could be profitable? And convert your unused space into multi-use areas to generate additional income. And we touched on that earlier, whether you're going to share the space, or if the space is not being used for one particular service, how can I add something else to use? Or you may think of giving up a part of the space. So those are options for you. But in the end, what you don't want to do is to think that in order for me to generate more, I need to do more, because your time is already limited and you're already stretched. So let's look at what you currently have and see how it is that we can make that better. And as we go through, if you are joining and you have questions, please go ahead and drop those questions in the chat. We normally just go through and look. And if you're watching the replay, please do the same. And if you'd like to connect with us, go ahead and we all have our devices. You can scan and book a call, and we'll have a conversation with you about how it is that you can just assess whether or not your office space is profitable. Optimizing your patient flow and scheduling. Touched on this earlier. Now, when you think about your patient flow, you want to maximize the number of patients you see while still delivering quality. Now, what does this look like? It can be you're reducing the wait time and you're increasing patient satisfaction at the same time. Think about what your patients are coming in for and the time that you're scheduling them to come in. Now, one pain point that a lot of patients have with doctors is that we're always waiting. And I say we because I'm also a patient, right? We're always waiting. It's not common where you find a doctor who is on time. Now, what this means for you is when you are late, the space is also there. So nobody's using it. And then because we mentioned patient satisfaction, if you are not on time and you're not maximizing the time when your patients are coming in, what can tend to happen? They are not happy. They end up going somewhere else, or they decide that, I'm just not going to be using you, or I'm not going to be referring you to anybody. And that can also impact the number of patients who are coming in. So maybe if you normally have your appointment starts at 10 and that has not been working, think about starting a little bit later. Extend your hours of operation and attract, the patients who are able to come in at certain times. I know a number of physicians may not work on weekends. Another thing that you can think of is, we've mentioned earlier, telehealth. No, this is growing, and I'm actually going to be reaching out to someone who I can have a live with to talk about what are some of the opportunities. Because with technology and with AI, even I was reading the other day about a tool or a device that monitors your patients' vitals while they're at home. And then what that enables them to do, that information is sent to your office. Your nurse is reviewing, and they know when it is that they need to call the patient to come in. No, when you have the patients coming in, just to, you're not just going to check and see if you're okay. I'm just going to come and check and see if you need some support. That may not be a proper use of your space. So think about other ways that you can reach out to your patients. So we spoke about streamlining your revenue, improving efficiency, and reducing overheads. How can you do that? Some persons are like, at the end of the day, our costs are fixed. There's not much that we can do in order to make those changes. So what can we do? Automation is one thing, but what I'll do, I'll look for the live that we did on that, and I'll drop it below this video. Train your staff to improve patient management and increase productivity. Review and reduce operational costs like utilities, supplies, and staffing. Sometimes we are not paying attention to our numbers. So you aren't looking at your number to see that, every month this has been the cost for supplies. This month it's here. Why is it here? Do we have a peak period in terms of patient flow? Remember, we spoke about that earlier. Do we have an increase in patient flow, which then increases the supplies that we need to buy? Those are some things that you need to look on. And if you aren't able to see it and you are not able to understand it, you need someone on your team who is doing that work. What happens for us sometimes, we're bleeding money, we're losing money, but because we aren't paying attention to the numbers, we can't answer the question as to whether or not that works. So explore those opportunities, whether you want to renegotiate, lease, or any other overheads that you're able to cut, and invest in technology that supports automating your routine tasks. Now, if you have someone at your front desk who picks up the phone and call patients to remind them to come in every time, if that is automated, that resource can be used for something else. And having those reminders increases your patient show rate, decreases your no-show rate. And if you're increasing persons who are coming in, then that is increasing your revenue. So those are some things that you want to think of. And we touched on KPIs, tracking your KPIs for continued profitability. If you don't know the numbers, you do not know what is happening, and you're not making informed decisions. It might have been working over the years, but is it sustainable? Can you still be taking a 50% salary cut when, by making small tweaks, you may realize that you're able to pay yourself what you're really worth? So track your revenue, use the data to make informed decision, and adjust your strategies where needed. What services are in high demand? What are not? What do we need to cut? Not many persons are coming in for this. Why? Or it could be based on the season. We realize that there's an uptick every year during this period for this particular service. This is what we're going to be focusing on. But without understanding your numbers, you can't make those decisions. And then you want to implement regular reviews where you're looking over that information, reviewing the information and seeing if it still remains consistent, and still ensure that your profitability is up. Plan for your expenses. Plan for your expenses. You are not able to know if your space is making money if you don't plan for your expenses. Your expenses just jump in, whether or not you can afford them right now. We just want to know what they are so you know what decisions you need to make going forward. Now, what is the space costing you? Look at your overall expenses and divide it by the number of offices that you have. Or if you want to go a little bit deeper than that, you can look at, I know most leases might say what the cost per square foot is. Use that as a proxy to say, you know what, this office space is costing me why I need to be generating this amount of money. But you need to be able to answer that question. So if we're keeping it simple and we're saying, okay, you know what, overall operating expense is $20,000 and you have 2 offices, you might be saying, you know what, I need to generate $10,000 in revenue to at least break even. And there's a reason I use operating expense. And I always encourage persons, ask your accountant for your income statement and look at that line, because we don't want to just use the rental costs, because guess what? You're marketing your office, you're paying rent, your utilities and insurance, wages, you name it. There are other expenses that comes into operating the office. So look at that line item on your income statement and use that as the amount that is costing you. You're going to include your salaries, all of those, things are included. Ensure that you have that there, divide that by the number of office spaces, and that is going to give you what your cost is. So ask your accountant for your income statement and just look at the line and see what's there. So we talk about plan for your expenses. You also want to plan for your revenue, understand how much revenue you should generate for your office in order to cover your expenses. And, as I touched on, think about when a country is doing a budget, especially during election time, or, after a new government has been elected, one of the things they normally do is present their budget. Most of the time, the first thing that they present is the expense. What is it going to cost us to run this country? And then we talk about how we're not going to be generating the money to cover the expenses. Think about your business the same way. Think about when you're planning, you're doing your own financial planning in your home, or you're planning to go on a vacation. The first thing you think about is, what is it going to cost me? That is the first thing we look at when we're doing just about anything. What is it going to cost? And then you work back way and you plan your revenue for it. So don't just decide that you're going to pick out of a hat, this is how much I want to generate. That's not what we're doing. We're not trying to work magic. We're not good at it. We're not magicians. We're business owners. So therefore, we're going to sit down and we're going to budget. We're going to think about our expenses. We're going to be thinking about the revenue that the office is generating and see how it is we can make sure that the plans that we have, the number of patients we can accommodate per day, we're planning for that. So without even looking at your numbers, at any given time, if you realize that you are supposed to have 10 patients today and you only had 2, maybe it was a slow day, but having a knowledge of your patient flow can help you with that. So, how many patients can you accommodate? You're able to answer those questions. What are your peak periods and what are your slow periods? So those are some of the things that I want you to think about when you're in the space where, oh my God, my office is not profitable. I want you to think about, how can I know my numbers? How can I know my peak periods are, my low periods are, and be clear on the cost for your service. This can also help you when you start working through, all right, I know how my patients are coming in. I know when my peak period is. I know my low period is. Does the cost reflect what I need to pay to deliver it? And it's a real question that you get to ask yourself, because you don't want to be, if you're not pricing it properly, it means that you're not able to sustain it. You're not able to continue to offer the value that you want to offer to your patients. And your cost per service times the number of patients, that's going to give you your revenue. And you ask yourself these 3 questions. Is this covering my overall expense? What changes, if any, do I need to make? And what changes can I afford to make? Because maybe you're not able to afford to make any changes now, but ask yourself those questions and start assessing more. How can I show up, and how can I show up and be great? So remember, you can go ahead, if you're just joining and you didn't see this, you can go ahead and scan, and we look forward to having that conversation with you. And so I hope that you found the information that we shared valuable, because what we want you to remember is not about doing more. It's about, how can I look at what I currently have, and how can I think about what I can do differently with it. So it's not just cutting your salary, it's not reducing your income, it's not adding a new service to what you currently offer to your patients. It could be, are we profitable? Is the office profitable? Am I managing my patient flow? Do I even know what it costs to operate the service? And those are some of the things that can help you as you think of growing your practice more without you doing more. So I hope you found the information again useful. Go ahead and drop us a comment right below the video. If you're watching the replay, hit replay. Any questions you have, we look forward to answering them. Thank you so much for coming on. We tried something different this evening. We normally go live earlier in the day, but I do understand that the persons I serve are working during the day. And so we thought that we'll switch things up a bit and come on a little bit later. Hopefully you're able to, come home and wind down and join. So let us know as well if the time works. And we look forward to sharing more knowledge and more of our expertise with you.